Welcome back to Junkin' with Junior. So, part 2 of the great transmission swap, but unfortunately we have to get a lot of stuff done before we get to actually swapping the transmission. So I know the titles are a little bit contradicting there, but work with me, stick with me, follow along. So, we got the engine out of the truck, got transmission out of the truck. I did do quite a bit of tidying up in the hood, under the hood area already. It looks like a disaster. I told you it was going to get worse, but everything's painted. I took the inner fender wells out, got those painted too. Hit the core support with some paint to get that snazzed up a little bit. Wiring harness, it's a mess. I've still got to tape it up and get some new wire loomer on everything, but I didn't want to do that yet because I know this idiot's going to forget a couple wires after everything's done all nice and neat and have to take it all loose and do it again. So no sense in wasting the time on that. I'm going to wait till a later date that we know that all our extra wires are in place as far as like our reverse light switch going to the transmission. I'm going to do a wire, switch 12 volt wire going out to the core support for the electric fans because I did change my mind. We're going electric fans. That'll be coming up soon, but it's time to get to the engine work. So what are we doing with the engine? Well, remember before I said that it's got a stock camshaft in it and it's holding in a little too much exhaust compression, closing the exhaust valve too quick. So that happening causes more compression in the engine than what it actually needs. So it's time for a new camshaft. Well, we've got a nice little made in USA billet steel core unit there. So it's actually a Summit Racing camshaft. Never ran one before. I've always been a big CC kind of guy. Memphis, Tennessee. Excellent product, but the stuff's just getting very expensive lately. So I found this one at about half the price of the other brand. And I said, you know what? This thing's made out of billet steel. I don't think we can go wrong. So what are we going with on this camshaft? Well, it is a 525 intake lift and 520 exhaust. And we're going to be using the stock 1:5 ratio rock arms. We're not increasing those. And it should be a pretty good all-around camshaft. Advertised duration 267, 265. At 50, that duration is going to be 218, 227. So is it going to be extremely rowdy? No. And we could go a lot more aggressive on the cam, but we want this to be just a nice smooth driver and make some decent torque. So it's going to sound a lot better than it did, but it's going to be a low enough RPM range. We're not getting too crazy. It should be done somewhere around 5,500 or so, and just keep this thing practical. That's the whole deal. We want it to be a nice, solid driver. That's what we're going for. So let's get to tearing down this engine, get the distributor intake manifold off of it. That way we can get that cleaned up, ready for paint to go back on it eventually. But then we can get all our stuff off the front, oil pan off, get the camshaft out, get a new set of lifters in there because remember I had a lifter that was ticking. So we want to go through all this stuff and just make sure we're good to go for a long time. Then we can start buttoning everything back together and get a coat of paint on there. And eventually we can get the transmission made it up to the engine and get it back in the truck. So it's all going to happen. It's just a long project here. Stick with me. Let's get to it. Intake popped off just like that, get it loose, and then I can get all that old nasty paint off here that's bubbling and stuff, and we can completely repaint that and make it look a whole lot better for when it goes back together. And another thing that I noticed, when my dad put this together, he forgot to put some sealant on that bolt, so it was leaking engine oil in the valley of the manifold right there. Quite the mess, so we're going to make sure to get some sealant on those this time. Okay, got this thing stripped down to the business end where we need to be, the camshaft. But I'm not a huge fan of this timing chain rotating over. She's got quite a bit of play in it. I'm going to change that out too. You can't leave that in there. It's just too loose for my likings. But we are going to have to stick with a single row so it fits under that factory style cover, so we don't have any issues there. But a little loose, so we're going to get one of those. Let's slide the cam out of her. Try to get it out of there gently without killing camshaft bearings. No need to be in a rush. There she is. Don't know what that is, but to my knowledge, like I said, it's a bone stock camshaft that Dad had put in here to work with that factory fuel injection, and it didn't work, so out with the old. Okay, so now that it's all the way apart, it's time to start going back together with it. Now, you might think, well, Junior, you should probably stop and clean everything up and get it painted at this point. I could. There's more than one way to skin a cat. You're not really doing it the wrong way as long as you're doing it. I think I'm going to go ahead and put the camshaft in it, get our new lifters and everything bolted back in so that everything's secure. I did crack the timing cover trying to get the oil pan off, so I'm going to have to get us a new timing chain cover and an oil pan gasket as well. I thought I'd be able to salvage it, but didn't make it. Ended up killing it. So going to have to grab a few more parts, but I can go ahead and get the camshaft in, like I said. And once we get the timing cover and pan back on and everything's sealed up, then I'm going to go ahead and clean it so we don't have any extra debris flying around. I can tape off the intake runners and the cylinder heads and get a nice coat of paint on everything, and then we're really ready to bolt our accessories back on and get this thing going. Last one. Just like that. Smooth as butter. Well, that certainly looks and feels much better. It has minimal play. Of course, it's going to loosen up some when it runs, I know, but we don't have any of that play like the old one had. It was pretty sloppy, so I feel much better about that. So making some real progress now. Got the engine all back together for the most part. Oil pan's back on it, timing cover, so the bottom part's all sealed up, but it's ready for paint again. That's the important thing. So got it all wire brushed, wiped down with some cleaner, and it's time to hit it with some POR 15 engine enamel. What color? Well, I didn't want it to be too crazy. I didn't really care for black like it was before. Just everything's black in the engine bay, and it just blah. I don't like all that black. So we're going with Cadillac blue. It's a real dark blue, so it looks really nice. I think it's a very elegant color, if you will. I mean, it is Cadillac, but get everything taped off so that we can actually brush it on. You could spray it if you wanted to, but it's just as easy to brush it. So we're going to get a few more things taped off here, our gasket surface areas, and for the grounds, and then it's ready to start brushing some paint on. Got me a painting assistant out here tonight. So it does look pretty good. It's a nice dark blue, especially over that black as the base color slash primer, if you will. And we're brushing it on. So yeah, it does have some streaks in it and stuff, but it does lay down really smooth after it sits for a few minutes. Well, she is blue. I'm going to hold the flashlight here to give you a little more light on it, but without the flashlight, it's very dark. I love it. It's a very nice blue. I did the valve covers as well, and then the intake manifold is going to be gray, so I think that should be nice and have some good contrast to it. Is the paint job perfect? Nope. It's just like everything else I do. Not quite perfect, but it's a whole lot better than it was. Alright, so got the intake manifold on, that's all sealed up. A lot of little stuff, temp sensor, water neck, got our distributor back in it, coil mounted on it, so just kind of getting everything ready engine-wise. Waiting on the pulleys to dry so I can bolt those back on. Had to put a fresh coat of paint on those. They were looking a little bit crusty, and we don't want that. Everything's going back nice and clean. So next step is going to be set this dude on the ground, put a rag underneath it so we don't scratch our new paint job, of course, but need to get it on the ground off the engine stand so that we can put our pilot bushing in, get all the clutch stuff set up and figured out on there, and we need to work on the hydraulic throttle bearing assembly as well, getting that all shimmed correctly so that when it all goes together and goes in the truck, all that is already done. It's much easier to do it while it's on the floor, and you can reach everything. You're not working overhead. Much simpler and safer. So we've made some good progress. We got the flywheel on, we got the clutch on, we've got the bell housing snugged up to the block, not tightened down completely yet because it is going to be on and off a few times. So we're getting to the very detailed part, and I think we're going to go ahead and end this one off here because we're kind of at a stopping point where we get into the more detailed, really specific stuff. And I don't have a 12-inch caliper. I've only got a 6-inch, so I'm going to have to get a 12-inch caliper in order to do this job correctly, because we need to make sure that the crankshaft and the pilot bearing is all in reference with the clutch input shaft. We need to make sure that that's not too long in case we need to space any of that. Once we get past that, then we can start shimming and adjusting the pilot bearing that goes on the transmission and get that depth correct, because it only has a certain range that it operates. So it's going to get pretty detailed on the next one. I'm going to work our way through that step by step. We're not going to get in a rush and make any mistakes. We want to do this once. We want to do it right. I don't want to pull this transmission back out after it's in the truck. So just going to take our time, read the instructions, and do it right. So that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching Junk with Junior. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.